Jerusalem stood on a knife's edge, led by a teenage king scarred by a devastating illness. Yet somehow, this young monarch dared to challenge the legendary Saladin, whose forces were sweeping across the land in a relentless wave. If you think you've heard every tale of the Crusades, what happened next might just rewrite everything you assumed about medieval warfare. King Baldwin IV ruled Jerusalem at only 16 years old and suffered from leprosy, an incurable disease that many believed would cut his life short. Saladin, on the other hand, led an enormous army backed by the power of the Ayyubid dynasty. Most assumed it was only a matter of time before Saladin conquered the Christian stronghold and claimed the Holy City, but that wasn't the whole story. As Saladin's army pressed in, Baldwin faced a kingdom stripped of its knights. Many crusaders had been diverted to distant campaigns, leaving only a small handful to defend Jerusalem. The situation grew so dire that Baldwin enforced the Area ban, a rarely invoked decree forcing every able-bodied man to take up arms. That single act revealed just how desperate the kingdom had become. Rumors started swirling in the streets that the young king's illness might make him unfit to lead. Whispers also surfaced that certain barons doubted his resolve. Still, Baldwin pushed forward. A fiery figure then emerged at Baldwin's side, Reynald de Chatillon, newly released from a brutal captivity in Aleppo. Known for his fierce hatred of Saladin, Reynald was determined to exact revenge. Because Baldwin's disease often weakened him, Reynald took on a commanding role, driving the kingdom's knights and soldiers into one last stand against an apparently unstoppable enemy. And what happened next would shock everyone watching the kingdom's fate unfold. Saladin moved at a measured pace through Palestine, confident in his superior numbers. He plundered farmland, captured men on their way to fulfill the Area ban, and sent them off as prisoners. From a strategic standpoint, Jerusalem looked ripe for the taking. Its defenses in disrepair, its population terrified and cowering in the Tower of David. Yet the Sultan made a careless mistake. He spread his forces too thin, allowing Baldwin and the Knights Templar to regroup in Gaza. With renewed spirit, they advanced to intercept Saladin at a place called Montgisard. Saladin's troops were still scattered, focused on looting rather than organizing. In a bold move, Baldwin and Reynald launched a sudden heavy cavalry charge. Their numbers were small, but they struck with such force that the unprepared Muslim ranks crumbled under the initial impact. Using their knowledge of the swampy terrain to their advantage, the Crusaders turned Saladin's larger force into a chaotic mass where superior numbers meant less than nothing. Saladin himself barely escaped, reportedly fleeing on a swift camel. When it became clear that his army faced total disaster, tales spread of how his once mighty army left hundreds of prisoners behind, many of whom were sold as slaves to the victors. After that miraculous victory, Baldwin led his men back to Ascalon. Only about a tenth of Saladin's original force made it safely to Egypt, hounded by Bedouins on the road. Against all expectations, the teenage king's bold tactics and unwavering spirit had saved Jerusalem, and for as long as he sat on the throne, the city would remain secure. Despite his failing health, Baldwin was relentless in his leadership, prompting some observers to speculate on how history might have changed if he hadn't been burdened by leprosy. His triumph at Montgisard became the stuff of legends, casting a long shadow over any claim that Jerusalem was doomed from the start. And so, the year that King Baldwin IV and his few knights vanquished Saladin's mighty army became the moment no one ever forgot. The question lingers: if a young ruler, stricken by a relentless disease, could reshape the fate of an entire kingdom, what else might have been possible under different circumstances? If Baldwin had lived a long and healthy life, would the course of the Holy Land have been altered forever? The victory at Montgisard stands as a testament to how determination, timing, and sheer bravery can upend even the most intimidating odds.